Facefront True Believers. Blue Dragon 5 here.
And Jacob Weil.
And Rohith Dar.
And we're doing a spoiler cast. You guessed it, on Fantastic Four First Steps. Yes, this was a highly anticipated one. I can say for me, it was like I would define it as like the MCU movie was all kind of riding on. I mean, look, Deadpool and Wolverine, that was a lock. We always, because that was separated enough from the MCU. No matter what it did, it was going to be probably okay. Daredevil Born Again on the smaller screen was going to be, that was like the other determination, which he kind of stumbled a little, but definitely shows promise for hopefully season 2 to really course correct. But this was it was all of that was just kind of like the opening act. It was the appetizer for Fantastic Four, which ever since Fox, ever since the Fox buyout, I was desperate for the Fantastic Four to be in the MCU, way more than the X-Men, because the X-Men were, either the damage was done or was at its best it could be by the Deadpool and Wolverine stuff that we had done. The X-Men was fine. We didn't really, the X-Men would have sank or swum on its own no matter what happens. But I was Fantastic Four, though, they needed a movie and they needed to be part of. That was like the only sect of the MCU we really never really broached in a way that we desperately need them to. We've kind of gotten close with the Skrulls, but still wasn't the FF. So I was very pleased with the end result that we got here. This is the rarity of, this is like definitive Marvel, which is what I want. I love definitive Marvel. So rarely do we get the comic book movies these days that are kind of in the definitive branch. When I say definitive, I'm talking about the era of the MCU where, as far as they knew, they only got one bite at the apple on this. So let's make it count. That kind of thing. It's like we need a film that kind of like, this is our statement on the characters and what these comic book characters are about. They want the full Kirby, man. They went full Kirby. So Kirby, it's, you hear the hum of the vacuum, man. They want all they did all Kirby. I cared about this family. I reveled in the 60s splendor of it all. It is economically paced, maybe to a fault in places, but we'll get there. But I mean, to the fact is, like, it's, we're going overblown a lot of the time these days. But this felt really like, it felt targeted to the story they wanted to tell. It kind of left you wanting more. That maybe you could expand upon things with Galactus and Silver Surfer. I could quibble about the Silver Surfer, but these are very minor concerns. The grand whole is that we finally have gotten a really great Fantastic Four movie that isn't like held back on the whole, like, well, does it hold up? Does it bring it from page to the screen? This is a best attempt we've gotten at page to screen. I'm darn happy about it. So, how do you guys feel about the movie?
I think overall the film, while the plot I think is pretty standard, straightforward, conventional, and I don't say this in like a negative way. I think it's a pretty, if you have read the Galactus arc from the Lee Kirby run or have an understanding of how that story plays out, what this movie does outside of one particular element, I think is pretty expected. But I think where the movie does really well is on a technical level in terms of the direction, the production design, the score, the overall ambiance and atmosphere of this being a very 60s retro futuristic world, and the overall casting and acting, of Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Backrack, Joseph Quinn, and Ralph Ineson as the respective characters. It feels like this is the platonic ideal of what the Fantastic Four are as a property, as a concept. And I think all the moreover, I wish moving forward, other films could take inspiration for just the visual style and clarity that this movie has in terms of its direction. I think Marvel was really lucky for Matt Shackman to have taken upon this project. I think clearly in terms of his visual style, he's very much a person that appreciates the period vibes, especially the 60s. It comes through, and taking influences from a lot of the space age projects or projects that take place in space age, just as like the right stuff and the Apollo mission, documentary footage that we see in behind the scenes for this movie. It's a movie that is straightforward and maybe doesn't go as in depth. I think the theme of family is kind of prominent throughout the movie, but even in spite of it being its simple storytelling, foundation, it's really well executed. And I think there's just a lot of potential for things to grow and expand and deepen in thematics and just overall storytelling potential. So I think this is a really great start. It establishes and adapts the spirit of the Fantastic Four, and I'm very interested to see where things progress and evolve when the Fantastic Four is fully, assimilated into the MCU proper.
All right.
Jacob?
I won't be able to go as in depth as you guys, but I will say that this is kind of what I imagined. Like seeing the Fantastic Four go from like page to screen. Like this is basically like almost definitively the best take of Marvel's first family. Like it encapsulates their characters fairly well. I mean, some changes here and there, but I think for the most part they absolutely nailed it. They finally did the characters right. I love that I'm a sucker for the found family trope, and also like retrofuturism is a kind of a key thing as well. So I'm a fan of that. I really love the depiction. I love the depiction of Galactus. He was like appropriately menacing. And Ralph Ineson did a great job bringing his menace to the screen, and I really liked how this movie kind of felt more intimate than the other ones did. Like it felt more disconnected, but in a good way compared to the rest of the MCU.
Okay. So, yeah, let's start breaking things in. Before we do, just something. Well, I guess first off, we have some comments we should probably shout out.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me just spell out the ones we should shout out. Okay, well, Executive Judge, he just kind of says, like, says some hellos. Let's see. Executive Judge also said, I saw the movie in 40X, and oh my. Yeah, I've heard this. I saw like someone did like a screenshot or something of like you apparently get a much fuller picture with, I don't know if it was only 40X or 40X and IMAX, where you really get the full frame in there. It looked really good. Code Geass Anime Fan asks, are Mr. Fantastic and the Thing flying?
They're jumping just imagine them just kind of jumping ahead. It's it's an action shot.
They're falling with style. Let's just say that much. All right. All right, let's see. And then, I guess Kogias also says, I like the 2005 and the 2007 basically the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, but, they're more like fun blockbusters than, fantastic films. Very appropriate word choice there, but yeah, pretty much. They're very much made of the times. I actually, so after watching, the new film, I went back and I watched both Tim Story films, and because you got a lot of reverence for them, there's a lot that I like in them. They always felt like kind of close but no cigar. They felt like it's very serviceable attempt, but when you look back on them, it's like, yeah, they are very much like they're landlocked in like that early 2000s era comic book movie where it's like we did progressively get a little better over time, but we were still kind of like we're carrying over a little bit of Raimi, a little bit of Daredevil 2003, but like we're kind of pushing past that, getting to the next level. It's like caught right in the middle. And Fantastic Four films.
And let's face it, the material wasn't good, but Lawrence Fishburne would have been a good Silver Surfer.
Well, Doug Jones would have been better though.
I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying if the story was better, then I think Lawrence Fishburne would have been a great Silver Surfer.
Well, of course. Anyway.
Yeah, to just add on to that, the Tim Story FF movies are very much like superhero movies that are very much the 2000s in terms of the fact that like there's just a lot of materialism, a lot of like, oh, heroes become celebrities. So it's kind of like gallivanting with girls and like a lot of media coverage. And I think that, and it's kind of, and I can see why these movies did that, because the FF are celebrities in their own right. They have public identities. but I just feel like it just felt less like, oh, the FF for people to be heralded, and more like, oh, superheroes, they're pop, like, they become public, they just become like any other celebrity.
Yeah.
And like it felt sort of like, oh, these movies definitely take stuff from like Entourage, not like exactly 101, but like it's definitely felt like, oh, Entourage is on, and so that kind of vibe impact, especially the Johnny Storm, as played by Chris Evans. And it's not those movies aren't really like huge sci-fi movies. I think when you compare it to like what sci-fi movies were out in the 2000s, like FF is the Tim Story FF movies were like action movies first,
Yeah.
with sci-fi elements, rather than sci-fi movies first with action elements.
Like the thing we can't take away from the Tim Story films for both of them, again, basically doing an equivalent to This Man, This Monster with the Thing. The way we portrayed the Thing in the first Fantastic Four movie was very dead on. It was very on the money. I still love that scene on the bridge where he can't get the ring, and Mr. Fantastic puts the ring in his hand. Perfect. Mm-hmm. So that's great. And then also, honestly, I do feel the way we portrayed the Silver Surfer was fantastic. So again, there are a lot of elements that we got really right with those movies that I think still hold up pretty well. Anyway, So with that though, you're right. Of the times they captured one aspect of the Fantastic Four, which is kind of the celebrity factor, which this has that, but also has the family factors. That brings me to my first point with this movie. So after seeing it, I do really feel it's not a big deal, but it just kept ringing in my head when I was watching the movie. Like they really should have called this Fantastic Four First Family, just given how much family is like a huge component of this film. Like even from the beginning, from the first scene in the movie, it feels like should have been First Family.
I mean, I feel like First Steps makes sense, and for a few reasons. One, it's like it's the Fantastic Four taking their first steps into the wider world of the MCU. Two, First Steps harkens back to like one step for man and giant leap for mankind. Third, First Steps, like baby takes their first steps.
Yeah, I get the baby, but the other 2 points I kind of take umbrage with. It's not, they're not really in the MCU until like a post-credit scene. Not even then are they really in the,
I mean, it's taking the first steps into being part of the MCU franchise. Yeah. I feel
like corporately, but not in the story though.
I'm siding with Rohith on this one.
It's not a debate; it's just opinion.
I know it's a debate.
For First Family, it's like it would make sense.
What Rohith's trying to say is like First Steps is more thematically appropriate for the movie instead of First Family.
Well, really, you don't think Family's thematic?
Well, no, it being the First Family is because like that makes sense for comic people because FF was the first Marvel comic property in the 60s, but since and the thing is, you can't really emphasize like, oh, they're like the first superhero team that's like a family because like Guardians, Thunderbolt, like they're like other hero teams before FF kind of have the, to one degree or another, the found family trope. So so it doesn't make like you can't really emphasize like, oh, family when like Guardians and Thunderbolts like have sort of the found family, dynamic, especially a dysfunctional one. I think the First Steps is like a little bit more emphasizing the like space age element as well as the baby like motherhood element. So, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. Anywho, so let's talk about our setting. You guys can hear me still, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyway, so 828. So yeah, we're in universe 828, which is a lovely nod to Jack Kirby, which I found so adorable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I didn't realize that until the end credits with his quote.
It was a very good idea. So basically, it's the MCU in kind of this in a retro futuristic 60s setting. It's basically seeming, as far as we can tell, in this universe, we just have the Fantastic Four as New York's heroes. That seems to be like there is no.
Not just New York's, but like the heroes of the world at large.
Okay, well, that's a fair point. Okay, the point being, it seems to be the Fantastic Four are the only, they're the only heroes on this in this Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The Fantastic Four have been around for 4 years, which I found that so cute, and it was like a good way of like, okay, so their experience, we always have to put a number on it, and it's like going with the number 4. It's kind of funny that DC is going with the number 3 Fantastic Four. Very clearly, they got to go with 4.
Yep.
So,
I
a
w-
lot of hallmarks of the FF have kind of happened within these 4 years, right?
Yep, including the recreating the iconic cover of Fantastic Four #1.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite things in the whole movie. I was so happy to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I knew it was going to be teased up in the marketing. Apparently, they worked on the effects or something since then. But it's like, cause I avoided that image, like seeing it fully. But it's like I had an idea. Oh boy, I think they're going to put it in there, and they did, and it was awesome. And not only that, we got the Mole Man.
Played by the lovely Paul Walter Hauser.
Did a great job. He's a perfect Mole Man. That's what I'm talking about. This is definitive combo casting, man. I love it.
Well, what I do kind of like about this, and something that I didn't get to say because I wasn't brought on for Superman, is like Superman, this movie isn't afraid to be a comic book movie, unlike recent Marvel fare.
Yeah.
It's like fully embracing the fact that it's a comic book movie.
And I feel like to make clear what it means, like what I think what you mean by like comic book movies, like you just kind of get dropped in the middle of the action. There's not like, oh, this is the characters before they become the heroes, and they go through their journey being heroes. Like you just kind of get dropped in and are kind of filled in the details, or kind of assumed to,
What I mean is, well, what I more mean is like it's not afraid to embrace the more ridiculous, silly side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how Superman did.
Well, yeah.
I'm saying like this. It's like the recent Marvel fare hasn't done that, and this movie does.
Yeah, the like both Superman and Fantastic Four definitely embraced like the silver age of it all. So, and I think the fact that because compared to say Iron Man and The Dark Knight, that I think they're like the big movies that like started like one could argue the golden age of superhero movies. I think Fantastic Four and Superman both coming out and being kind of like movies that already trust you know the history of these characters and dropping in this very sci-fi, very fantastical world. I think it shows sort of the evolution of the superhero genre in movies, at least, that audiences are comfortable and are wanting to see things be more comic booky. So I'm very excited to see how other characters down the line can embrace the comic bookiness, that these two movies are openly embracing.
Right. It's a good omen. So with we have so the way we open the movie, we have like the news montage, which basically catches us up, and again, it's really refreshing to be thrown into it versus doing the origin again, and just kind of like that's how we kind of give our summation. Okay, here's what happened, here's kind of where we are roughly, and everyone's kind of like, we've gotten past this man, this monster, the thing's okay with being who he is. We have just kind of some great world building at play here. I mean, again, I love the. It's a great economic idea that sells the Fantastic Four as celebrities. It's very much like kind of an alternate kind of like history kind of a thing. Like again, the illogical logic that I thrive on is like incorporated into the Fantastic Four. Like, okay, so if they did exist, here's how they would impact the world at large, which is basically what has shaped the world and is kind of what's given us kind of a Jetsons future of sorts, thanks to Reed Richards. One could infer,
Yeah, I mean, like Reed Richards, like essentially the fact that this Earth 828 essentially is a utopia. With the fact that one, the level of technology, and I mean the fact that like it's 1965 in their universe, and they've achieved FTL technology, and two, the Future Foundation being kind of a stand-in for the United Nations, where all the member nations in the foundation have demilitarized, with the exception of one Eastern European nation
known as Latveria.
Yes. Yeah, we'll touch on that one later.
But what could it possibly mean?
Yeah, what's funny though about that Latveria gag?
What is it?
Reminds me of this little Easter egg in Batman '89, where if you notice, Bruce Wayne is missing. He was like supposed to be at the big Harvey Dent press conference, but he's missing.
All right.
No, I'm just saying it's like the whole gag of like, oh, well, someone's not here. Oh, we know why he's not there. Anyway, so but one of my favorite. I love the Fantastic Science with Mr. Fantastic show. It's very much it's kind of like a Walt Disney, the kind of the Walt Disney show and the Bill Nye. It's kind of Bill Nye meets like the Walt Disney the Wonderful World of Color thing.
The Wonderful World of Disney, kind of.
Yes, exactly.
And of course,
like kind of something you see like an Epcot or whatever.
Yeah, it's very Epcot kind of mixed with a little bit of Bill Nye. I love it.
And I love how and I love where he's like where he's like trying to like explain like the hard science. Then when he notices the children, are like, okay, who wants to see an explosion? Me. and then he just he knows what the kids want.
So from top to bottom, this opening, it's a loving tribute to the Fantastic Four. We have the Baxter Building, we have the Fantastic Car. We have the blue and white suits with like the cozy knitted look, which is a really good idea. We've kind of basically we legitimized the Corman Fantastic Four in live action to a degree. It was all good. It was all good stuff.
Who even has cameos in this movie?
Yeah, which is really lovely too.
Yep.
So we hit again the cover from the first appearance. All this and our foes who we either name drop or we see in the cartoon later. We got so we have Mole Man. We have Red Ghost who shows up in cartoon form and his apes show up. He himself got cut, unfortunately, probably for pacing, but Puppet Master, Wizard, Diablo. The fact that we have like Diablo name drop just cracks me up. That he actually got it. We actually alluded to there was a Diablo. It's probably a lot of the Earth-based threats the Fantastic Four deal with. They were mentioned because again, Galactus being like the first like kind of interstellar kind of like threat they've really had, it seems, and also the Mad Thinker. So it's a very lived-in world. A lot of stuff has happened. Our plot itself. Basically, it's interesting that each Fantastic Four movie has tackled like these, these big chapters, like the classic, big chapters of the Fantastic Four, and like this logically is the next progression. So think about like the Corman and the first Tim Story film, Origin. Essentially the origin, and I guess Fan 46, the origin. Sequel to the Tim Story film, Rise of the Silver Surfer. We have the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And Galactus with the Silver Surfer. But for the point I'm trying to make is we have the origin, we've done the wedding, and now this movie we're doing the baby. We're doing Franklin. So this is it's kind of interesting. We're adapting these chapters in the Fantastic Four, and we finally gotten the one that we just have never really been able to get to. So it's a great way of like not repeating ourselves and just kind of moving on to the next logical step with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a great way of reintroducing them. Make it a huge. Basically, what if we made the birth of Franklin Richards this huge event with one of the other biggest Fantastic Four events, Galactus? So that way, we're not just retelling that story; we're adding kind of a nice flourish that helps kind of reconnect certain wires and how we've
And I think it's like at least faithful to sort of the ideas and concepts of the comics because down the line. I think there's a specific Mark Waid miniseries that covers the history of the Fantastic Four. Yep. And in it, Franklin Richards is an adult. Mm-hmm. The end of the story becomes the successor to Galactus. And so the fact that, in this story, Galactus sees Franklin, this young baby, as the successor is, very much in tune with the comics. The fact that, Franklin is like an Omega level mutant. His birth being so significant to the story and in light of what's going to be the next saga, especially being focused not just on X-Men, but means as a whole, I think this movie is going to be very pivotal, in terms of setting up what Franklin can mean, not just for, Doomsday and Secret Wars, but even beyond in terms of his capability. So that's going to be very interesting. And I think also part of Franklin being born and Galactus coming in the picture, it's like, it's very biblical in the sense where you have like this impending, cosmic, entity that could be an Old Testament God, and he's asking the FF to play the role of Abraham and sacrifice, Franklin as the Isaac in the story.
Yeah, I mean, it just I like that, the opening of the movie is a very intimate scene between Reed and Sue, and it's about like the idea of becoming parents and like the promise like things won't change. It feels very a lot of people in lobbing the Incredibles comparisons, which is very it was of the time. Because think about it, you had the Incredibles, and then you had the actual Fantastic Four movie, which nowhere near hit what the Incredibles was. So the Incredibles and Fantastic Four have always had kind of this kind of causal relationship. So it's kind of tantamount to the we're superheroes. What could happen? Kind of moment from the Incredibles in a sense of they the movie hinges on like the big life changes that are going to befall the Fantastic Four. A big step going from kind of husband and wife to parents, and basically again family's already been incorporated into their dynamic with like family and like in the generational sense. So it's applying that to big changes in their world and everything that's happening to them. Galactus and just the changing just every like where they think they are in the universe and all this. So it's kind of great that we've kind of linked those big shifts in life together.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess let's we should probably take a moment before we really dive into the story. We should probably break down just kind of our takes on the characters and kind of like like the big four as it were. Reed. So Reed here, Pedro Pascal. Mr. Fantastic often in these movies, he always gets lost in the shuffle. And here, I think we find we got Pedro Pascal. He's got leading man charisma. I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for the smartest man who's terrified by the unknown variables. Like that's a great sell for our new take on Mister Fantastic. He's the unknown variables of fatherhood and the future are kind of terrifying him, and that's why he's like trying to think and kind of predict everything that's going to happen, which clearly Galactus is like the big wrench. Like, I did not see that one coming. Oh boy. It adds this great human element that I think he's been missing in film. Like, it's always like, see, I was like that weird kid where I really loved Mr. Fantastic. I loved Reed Richards, but I always felt like guilty because, like, oh man, but I know the Thing and the Human Torch are kind of like the big, like the cool members of the team and everything. But Mr. Fantastic, I like the stretching ability. I like the idea. It was really smart, but he always got overshadowed. And the movies, again, he similarly got overshadowed in the movies. But we finally we made him compelling. We made him like a good leading man for a change.
You have to cast one of the internet's boyfriends to play this man and give him this time to shine, which I think I don't know if you can just make a slight transition. Pedro Pascal casting as Reed was certainly one of the most like discussed casting choices in the MCU, and I feel like this movie he definitely hit it out of the park, and I think what he does with Reed, it's very. I feel like people are doing a disservice and not realizing that Pedro Pascal is a much better actor than people give him credit for, and there's a reason why he's so prominent as he is, especially in the past like 10 or so years. Like
I've always really liked whatever I've seen him in. Frankly, I mean, even not even counting Mandalorian. I really look. A lot of people always dog on the movie. I still really liked what he did in the Wonder Woman movie. Okay, I thought he was really good in that, but that's just me. I love that he looks back on the movie, he makes fun of the fact. The reason we actually, I was wondering, I'm surprised Pedro Pascal did not shave for this role. He said if they asked him, he would have done it, but he basically said like, in that Wonder Woman movie, is the last time he was ever without facial hair because he hates the way his face looks without facial hair, and that's why he's kind of like.
Honestly, I understand it because I want to be careful because I don't want to comment too much on physical looks because all actors and people can have their beauty and whatnot, but it's like without the facial hair, his lips I think just kind of look the shape of it and all that, and I think his face just doesn't shape in a way that he looks great with facial hair. It's kind of like I don't think Burt Reynolds would look as good if he was clean shaven. I think like Pedro Pascal and Burt Reynolds are kind of men that benefit from facial hair.
I think Pascal looks at his best with facial hair, but I don't think that should have precluded him from look. I think ultimately it still works. It looks, and Reed Richards has had a beard in the comics. It's like a weird in between that we've had here. Like we don't have the beard.
I like the look because in my mind, I think when you especially look to say like how men were just styled in that time period. There were certainly just as much men with like mustaches, and especially with the mustache he has here. It's like it's evocative of like kind of the Walt Disney kind of feel.
Well, here's I'm gonna throw one more at you here, okay? In a sense, I know I keep using that. But I'm sorry, I just keep throwing in a sense all throughout this thing, by the way. But just the fact that, when I was rewatching the Tim Story movies, and I was like thinking about this, it just kind of occurred to me that again, in nailing the Reed and Ben Grimm relationship, you got to remember it's like, Stan and Jack put a lot of themselves in the comics from time to time, and of all the things they put themselves in, the Thing essentially is Jack Kirby in Orange Rock. And to an extent, Reed Richards is Stan Lee, and that's kind of how they saw their dynamic to a degree. Stan Lee was always he was the verbose, chatty one. So in a sense, giving Reed Richards a mustache just feels like yet again we're kind of bringing the life of Jack and the Jack and Stan Lee dynamic to a degree.
I mean, not just like Mr. Fantastic, but like Spider-Man and even Silver Surfer, who's like Stan Lee's favorite character, and they're all three of them are characters that are very grandiloquent and verbose.
Yeah. Eloquent, chatty, and philosophizing. There's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm saying it kind of. I think I don't think it never really occurred to me until all the to really like hearing Pedro Pascal talk about the facial hair. Like saying how he was shaved and everything. It's just like what. There is a bit of Stan Lee in there because you're right. There's a lot of Walt Disney in there, but still, it's just kind of like you could maybe look at as it's kind of like bring to life the whole Jack and Stan thing, maybe to some degree, which I like. I actually heard, I haven't rewatched the movie yet, so I can really see for sure. But I heard that there's actually a Stan and Jack cameo in the movie where they cast like two young guys to kind of resemble Stan and Jack Kirby, like in an office.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Yep, they're in there, and they work at a place called Timely Comics.
Yeah, which that's amazing, isn't? How great is that?
And there's some of the like Jack Kirby's art is on the wall, so it's kind of it's reminiscent in some degree of like seeing the Captain America comic be produced in you and the first Avenger, and also in All-Star Superman, when Superman creates a universe without Superman, and in that universe he was just makes Superman. So it's such a great like meta point about the creators kind of impacting the work and the work impacting the characters kind of in a symbiotic way.
Yeah, so it's also like what I said with I love the logical logic. I love the idea that in universe like Captain America has the comics and the serials and everything, and then to a degree here with the Fantastic Four we have that with the cartoon and just the merchandising and the product placement. So I love that we're like the mythology just exists internally in the framework of the universe. It's just really cool.
We have Johnny with the sunblock.
The copper tone.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's I thought it must be a homage or take on a classic commercial advertisement. It is, and I think the world building is just immaculate.
Yeah. So again, back to this kind of bridges into the other one as well. So with Reed Richards, he loves Sue. Ben's his best friend. We hit on the guilt for a bit. He still is not forgetting himself for what happened to Ben and everybody, but he's kind of moved past it. But it's nice that we're not focusing on this monster with the Thing, but I like that we do kind of like we touch on it, and that it's like it's still there, and the way in which we do it, where they're going back to space, and Reed does not want to get anything wrong again, like he did the first time. So I like that there's like additional pressure there, and it's like a shadow in the room,
Mm-hmm.
He's got a nice dynamic with Johnny, which is really fun. That the two of them, or it's I don't know, it's this thing where like Reed likes to likes to kind of not lecture John, but like give him like a little bit like kind of give him like a little science demonstration of sorts, almost like a Doc and Marty kind of a thing to some.
As compared to say the Tim Story, less so, but I think like for the prior depictions of the FF. It didn't feel like for say Reed and Johnny that it was like Reed is very much an older brother-in-law and Johnny's like the younger brother. Like I think for say Ian Grufford and Chris Evans, when they played those respective characters in the Tim Story movies, it felt very much their dynamic was just like co-workers. Whereas I think for Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn, when they played their respective characters, that one scene, I really felt like they really played like a familial dynamic. And I think part of it is that like Joseph Quinn is definitely like, younger than Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby. So he does play into that. And I think just the mannerisms and Pascal does such really is the most like Reed. his interactions with Johnny. And I think kind of him having facial hair and like Johnny being this like clean shaven pretty boy look really emphasizes like Reed being the like not stern but like authoritative patriarch, and Johnny being the rapscallion youth of the family.
Yeah, and another thing, Mr. Fantastic here is, he's intelligence has always kind of been his power, and stretching has been secondary. And I think we really showcase that here, where thematically he's, as we see when he's just doing the expository scenes, he is stretching on the chalkboard and everything. Where like, he thematically and physically, at a later point during the action, he is stretched thin, in many directions to save his family and save the world, and everyone's looking to him for answers. And we really hit on it's really stressful being Mr. Fantastic. There's a lot of pressure on the poor guy.
Yeah, I think, I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but the one scene between him and Sue where he says, "I don't dream, I don't wonder, I think of every terrible thing that could happen and invite it into my head, so that way I know how to hurt them before it hurts us." And it's like, wow,
It's a great statement on the character. Like, that's Mr. Fantastic.
yeah, and I think it gives a bit of like tragedy to Reed, because I think part of like whenever people think of Mr. Fantastic, oh, he's like the smartest guy in the world. He makes his great inventions. He's a lovely wife. But like living as Reed Richards, even before he becomes Mr. Fantastic, it's like it's not an existence that can be greatly appreciated, because I think like him having this level of intelligence, it's not like, oh, he's so smart that people don't understand him. It's like he's so smart that he thinks of everything that could go wrong. And so his adventures are just, it's, if anything, kind of there's sort of an interesting parallel with him and MCU Tony Stark. These men who are great minds that are, because of they just constantly overthinking, they have sort of this neurosis about wanting to protect everything, and maybe might going too far, or just being, burdened by having to be sort of the protectors of their respective worlds.
Yeah, we had that great bit, and again, it feels very much in parallel to Tony Stark and well, I guess kind of Ultron and a little bit Iron Man 3, but it's just the idea that like Tony Stark wants to put a suit of armor around the world after he saw essentially kind of Thanos, and like he saw the bigger picture of the cosmos. And on the flip side, Mr. Fantastic, he's about to be a father, so he kind of wants to. It's kind of like that gag in Merry Little Batman. He wants to get rid of all the crime before his kid's born. He's that's essentially he's basically prepared to do that, and then of course he learns the world's a wee bit bigger than he anticipated.
Or in this case, the universe.
Oh yeah, I also one of my favorite human bits of Mr. Fantastic was like he and Ben are talking, and Ben says, "Can you cook?" Well, that's more an art than a science. Do you have a driver's license? That course, there's a something off with the course or something.
There's no proper, the signage was not properly installed.
That's it. That signage was not properly installed.
Yeah, I appreciate that Reed. And it very much is in line with like certain people can be really smart in a theoretical or even like practical sense, but may not have the ability to do things that are more dexterous or less like, scientific in nature. Things that maybe have a level of creativity or handicraft. Like I honestly think
like you could be a genius science, you might not be a great engineer, that kind of thing. Like you.
Well, I mean, he's also an engineer, but it's more just.
I know he is, but you can't build. You can't. I'm sorry, go on.
No. What I meant to say is like part of Reed, like here's the thing. Reed said in his movie, well, anyone can make a crib. I don't think Reed can make a crib. That's why I think like he like Herbie do it, because that's like. I think, yeah, I feel like
I don't know. I think he could do. I think he's too bored, and that's why he can't do it. It's like it's just he get too frustrated to the point of like, why am I even doing this?
The one class that Reed failed was an art class,
wood shop.
Yeah,
or home ec.
Well, sure.
Or driver's ed.
A lot of courses. Probably gym class. I don't know. Anyway, so. Let's see. And anyway, yeah. So the point being, it's we represented him pretty well, and I love that his goal is his goal is in conflict. The two goals of saving his family and saving the world are in conflict with each other through the course of the movie, which is also really good. All right, so let's talk about Sue. Let's talk about Invisible Woman here. So, strong matriarch of the family as she wants. We really show that Sue's always been very key, at least in the comics, to the Fantastic Four. I mean, it's no bones about it. She's always been like the most powerful member of the team, and we really showcase that not just power and like her actual power set, but powerful in that she's the glue. She is the matriarch. She is the one. She completes Mr. Fantastic. He's the intelligence and he can build the stuff, but she brings out that humanity, or she is like the personability to his analytical nature. It's like they really make a great pair. They have great chemistry. He struggles with the he struggles with the finesse, and she kind of compensates for that.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is that Reed has probably the highest IQ out of anyone in the universe, whereas Sue has the highest EQ out of anyone in the universe. And so that's why they make such a great pairing. And can not to say that Sue is an idiot or that Reed is emotionless, but their capabilities and high proficiency, their respective domains help to complement and account for the other's weaknesses.
Yeah, they counterbalance each other very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
So she's essentially this respected kind of UN figure and diplomat, and I love the fact that she's kind of like she kind of like redeemed, or at least kind of she worked things out with the Mole Man for Subterranea, which is great.
So executive judge has a question, and I'll briefly answer it just to make sure that everyone's. So what's EQ? EQ stands for emotional quotient. So IQ is like intelligence quotient, like how intelligent or smart someone is. EQ is how emotionally sensitive or acute one is of other people's emotions. So people who can be empathetic, who can help be a counselor and soothe other people's emotions. So that's kind of where for Sue, the fact that she's the head of the Future Foundation is able to corral multiple nations to demilitarize their forces, and is the one to convince and persuade like Harvey Elder, aka the Mole Man, to allow people to go into Subterranea when Galactus comes in. That's kind of thing her power. I'll say this: I wish we got to see more scenes of Sue being like a diplomat, ambassador kind of role, her using her people skills really well.
Now it might have been really cool, and there was no room for it in the movie, and it would have created a complication. I know, but her like dealing with Namor and the UN might have been kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of funny. Like everyone, the fact that she's Charm City, everyone loves Sue Storm. Is the idea anyway?
He is the better half for a reason.
Well, yeah. So anyway, Sue, so her crux theory is that she's going from wife to mother, and there's a big fear of like what changes a baby could bring. They had I love the detail. They've been trying to have kids, and after a while, they just kind of gave up on it. And then this was a very unexpected event, and it was like the promise that nothing's gonna change. But this poor woman, we put this poor woman through the ringer. Like the whole world is out to get her baby, and they're in the limelight, and she wants invisibility. It's like she's in the limelight, she wants invisibility, which is kind of how we thematically make her power set just very
Mm-hmm.
which is always like a thing we've kind of had. Like, why do they have these, like, of all the cosmic abilities they could have been endowed with, why do they have the powers that they've been given? The Tim Story one did a very, like, half-hearted, like, and here's why. The Fan Force stick was like, well, that's something to do with the way in which the horrific thing happens to them. But, it's...
Yeah, I think like certain comic, like there's like one comic where it's like Reed was trying to like stretch out to like care for Sue. Sue was like wanting to hide away and not feel the brunt of the cosmic rays. Like Johnny felt was like hot under pressure or whatever, and then like Ben was like solemn and stoic, and that's kind of where like elements equal personality.
Yeah, which I mean sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, and just going thematic with it here, I think is probably a good call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So she's put through the ringer. Also again, really you feel the importance. First, again, classically, first female Marvel hero, big role of honor, and here we kind of feel the importance of her. Represent her powers well. Essentially, we do the way we do the effect on her here is that you get a sense it's not just like she got two powers, is that the whole thing is like bending light. So it's like the light spectrum thing, and the way in which she does that allows invisibility, and like in bending the light, it's like that's where the force fields come from.
Yeah, and then because of the rainbow color effect, it helps to, I think, one, you can be able to like, you can see there's an invisible like force or sheet or like ray, because when you do what, because I think in prior, depictions, it'll be just kind of like a thin blue layer.
Yeah.
And I think with the color of it, it's kind of, fitting with the time, the 60s. It's got, like we see Polaroids or whatever, there's kind of a little bit of a rainbow color effect to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also there's it's very, evocative and colorful and comic booky. Like, considering how all the other characters have very visually splashing powers, I think for Sue, having a power set where you can see like a rainbow color stream coming out to like protect like civilians or at Galactus, like, oh, this is like a dynamic, like really cool power. And it's especially seeing in a big theatrical screen, it's, that's something to really emphasize the power and majesty of Sue in ways that might have been depicted in prior adaptations.
Yeah. Jacob.
Yes.
Do you have something you wanted to tell us about anymore?
No.
Okay.
But Tiki does.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry. I thought that might have been you, Jacob.
There you go.
Yeah. In case someone thinks I'm crazy for bringing that up, I forget. Sometimes Jacob will sign it like Jacob, or vice versa. Tiki didn't sign it, so that's why I thought maybe Jacob was throwing something in the comments.
Nope, that's Tiki.
No, like that. Yep. So Johnny boy. I guess real quick, I used to do the shout out Tiki's kind of anymore. I feel like Namor's being brought into Doomsday specifically because of the Sue dynamic. I mean, yeah, he was one of the infinite chairs, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that tracks. Yeah. Okay, we'll save the rest of this when we get to the space travel thing. But let's talk about Johnny. So the Human Torch here, he feels. You know what's weird? I could be completely off base with this. Johnny in this movie, he feels kind of like an amalgam of our past Human Torches in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
He aesthetically, I think he looks the most like the Roger Corman, Human Torch.
Yes.
He's fun. He's fun like the Chris Evans Human Torch, but he's also we see he's smarter like the Michael B. Jordan Human Torch.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels kind of like it feels like a proper amalgam of all the previous Human Torches that have kind of given us the one that we have here. He's got the brotherly dynamic with Ben, which is great. I love the detail, like him eating cereal at the dinner table, and like Ben's, you're gonna spoil your appetite. He's like playing with like the little action figure of himself. Flame on, flame on. It's adorable.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. I remember there's some criticism about, because I think Joseph Quinn interview is like, oh, we're trying to, and having Johnny being depicted in this movie, we don't want to make it. We're trying to update certain aspects of the personality and modernize it. And people are like, oh, they're not going to make it be a womanizer. I think what I appreciate for Joseph Quinn's Johnny Storm in this movie is that a lot of people really praise the Chris Evans take on the character, and I think there is some merit to that characterization. But I think if one were to really sit down and read the comics, or just really think through like that just performance character, Chris Evans as Johnny Storm is just very much the womanizer and nothing much else beyond that. Whereas I feel like for Johnny, like he has that kind of playboy swagger. He's kind of flirting with Shia LaBeouf, but he has a level of depth and intelligence, and it makes sense for why he was on that initial like manned mission to the stars. And the fact that he has like moments where he's able to show like ingenuity and intelligence, that like, not to make him on the level of Reed Richards, but he shows like, yeah, like Johnny Storm isn't like a bimbo, like a himbo or anything like that. He has he has like his kind of like social, delusions, but he has moments where he thinks through stuff and is able to kind of, figure out and solve puzzles. And I think I really appreciated that, aspect of Johnny, because then it's like, if he gets to interact with Spider-Man, it's not just like smart, nervous guy and then cocky, like celebrity guy. Like both characters can have their level of intelligence as complementary, and there's an overlap rather than just like them being total opposites.
Yeah, I mean he's a little more responsible than we've seen him before. He's he cracks the language code, which is it's a huge plot point that really helps save the day at the end. We have the deep space finals like the Voyager, the
And
rocket thing.
and also him making the being willing to make like the sacrifice play twice.
Coolest moment one of the coolest moments in the whole movie.
Yeah, tell Franklin that his Uncle Johnny was brave. It's like, yeah, like
No. Tell Franklin that Uncle Johnny loves him.
Yeah, and I think the fact that I think Johnny, the way he's characterized, I don't know if maybe they came upon this characterization because like the fact that like his sister's having a baby, and I think probably that's what maybe this is not something that's directly commented upon, but I have to imagine in their minds like, well, what makes Johnny act in a way that's smarter and responsible than people typically give him credit for? If his sister's becoming a baby and he's becoming an uncle, like there is a level of like responsibility that even though like Johnny isn't going to be like not fully like a 180 complete different person, I think over the course of the story you see him have some level of introspection, some level of wanting to be involved in his like family's life and being excited about being an uncle.
Oh yeah, it's great. Also, aesthetically, I love that when because we've done it like a number of times at this point. Like, how do we make the Human Torch kind of the guy on fire look better? Well, yeah, because of the lines on the suit and the basically when we light him on fire and we do the Human Torch thing. I love that the eyes are glowing yellow and everything, like but not the whole face, like which kind of
and you get to see his hair, and
Yeah.
it's not just like how it was for the prior depictions where it's just like orange flame covering and you can see like a male figure, but not really the details of Johnny's physique. So that I really appreciated.
I had one nitpick, but it's very small. It doesn't. It basically we hit it when we have him like actually in the suit. It looks great, but it's this thing of like it's a criticism, but it's also a compliment. Where I love the idea that we've gotten. It's 4 years later, so they have like clothing that like Johnny's not burning through his clothes because he's wearing like the clothes that were specially designed by of the same unsale molecules the the suits are made of. But it's just because of that. You don't get the full effect like seeing like the lines that we used to draw on, that Kirby used to draw on the Human Torch, that we have when he's actually full on in the suit. So I kind of miss that. I wish that was more in the movie, but it looks great though all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I think Rohith was making a fart.
No. I think the fact that there were lines on the suit, yeah, it would have been cooler to maybe see that be more pronounced, because I think there's like. And I saw this in a breakdown of the movie. It's like in the cereal box that like Johnny has at the back, like this shows like basically Kirby like Human Torch.
Yeah,
and he has the classical lines on there. So
yeah, it's great. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about the ever loving blue eyed thing. So New Yorker, we see the Yancey Street roots, which we've always kind of like circumvented here. We never really like seen, we've established he's from Brooklyn, but we never really saw like Yancey Street really, and we also kind of broached like the kind of the Jewish side of the thing, which is really appreciated. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like the black and white cookies from the Jewish deli.
Yep.
Very nice. I love him. I love that he's walking around and he knows everyone. That's the thing that made like yes.
He knows everyone. Everyone knows him.
Lifts the car for the kids. An adorable scene. And again, that's it. Again, essentially he's the soul of Jack Kirby is in the thing. I think we really brought that to the screen here. And this is a stretch, mind you. He's friendly with the teacher of like I think it's
Rachel Rosman.
Well, yeah, Rachel Rudd. I'm trying to think of like, was that like a religious school that she was teaching, or just happened to be a school that's on the same block as like the church?
No, it's just the same.
Temple. I mean,
it's being the same like street or area as like the school that she.
Gotcha. So it's not like basically it's not like the Jewish equivalent to Catholic school. That's what I'm asking. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it just happens to be in the same neighborhood. Anyway,
Yeah.
so she so Rachel Rosman, is a stretch, mind you, but with Rosman, yeah, I wonder if maybe a nod to Roz Kirby. Just throwing it out there. Of course, Roz Kirby, the model and inspiration behind Big Barda on the DC side of things.
Yeah, I think was one thing. There's one maybe negative I can say about that particular aspect. It's like I love Natasha Lyonne. She's great on Poker Face. A personality character in her own right. But I just feel like her character could have been played by anyone. Yeah. And I think the fact that
we didn't go with Alicia, it kind of shows. Like it feels like we should have had Alicia.
I mean, I feel like because with Alicia, she there's her father, the puppet master, and was the puppet master not mentioned in this movie?
No, he was mentioned. So what do you think? So the Alicia thing happened, and that's what I'm saying. Like you would imagine they might be still together, right?
I have to imagine that they didn't want to broach that because I feel like because with how much history there is with like the Four and Alicia Masters and all that stuff, I figured that's stuff that you want to go into detail in like future sequels when they're fully established in the MCU.
Right.
So because I think because you could probably do like a Puppet Master focus FF movie, and have Alicia Masters and Ben get together and have their adopted children. So but I feel like that's stuff that hasn't been fully fleshed out yet, so it wouldn't have been right to like bring in Alicia Masters without having that planned out.
It's still like the fact that there's a lady who she's got red hair and she's like the thing. It just feels like, oh man, we're so close to Alicia, but it's not her, but it's still nice. I like it, but you're right though. It's not really consequential. It's just kind of like it's a thing bit. It's a thing.
Just to clarify for Executive Judge, it's Alicia Masters, not Felicia. You're thinking of Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat, who at some points is a love interest Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, aka bye Felicia. Sorry, it's done. That's another movie. But
I will say I mean also in fairness to the movie, Ben Grimm has had been with other women, even as a thing. So but yeah, I think as Tiki mentioned, it's like if the fact that she just has only like 1 or 2 scenes max, maybe 3 scenes, it's like you could have also cut it and and I know I feel like people have had comments about this movie's been cut down. There's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. I feel like whatever stuff's on the cutting room floor, outside of maybe 1 scene or 2, probably wasn't necessarily as needed as people would think. I think the stuff that was maybe cut from Superman, I think probably impacted the pacing of the movie and just fleshing out the supporting cast. Whereas I think for the FF, like the stuff was cut out was probably stuff with like the montage at the beginning, but otherwise I don't think there's anything that's like fundamental to fleshing out either the story or any of the characters in the movie.
All right, let's see. Tiki in the comments, he says, I love how Evan's natural accent is equally believable for Chicago and New York. Haha. Guy's voice is like a perfect Venn diagram of the 2 dialects. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, it helps that Evan Bossmacher being a Jewish actor, and the Jewish Americans have are a prominent part of both Chicago and New York. So in terms of accents and feel, there is that kind of overlap.
Oh yeah. So so again, we're in an era of the thing where he's well adjusted. Again, he's he's very comfortable in his own rocky skin. Which is he's got all the custom fitted clothing. We have the fun runner about it's clobbering time. The idea that the cartoon gave him the catchphrase, which is also kind of a deeper cut nod to the thing crossing over the Flintstones.
I don't know if you read or ever aware of the prequel comic.
Never mind.
Or are you going to bring that up?
No.
Okay. So the prequel comic.
I was going to bring this up.
Oh, okay. before I get into that, the prequel comic actually like has Ben saying it's clobbering time, but
Oh,
but when he says it, it's like the others are like, "Do you just said that?" And now and he regrets saying that. And I think the cartoon brings that up as a phrase, and it's a thing that like he just hates saying because when he said it that one time, and people were just kind of clowning him for it. So
so by the way, is the prequel comic any good?
I have not personally read it. I just know that it just goes into details of like them meeting JFK, them having their first like fight against the mole man and their origin. So I know it's written by Matt Fraction, who did some work in FF, and it's for all intents and purposes it's very much in the voice and style of the movie. So if you have a chance to read it, but
Okay.
that's I figured to mention that just so to make not Ben can't really blame it too much in the cartoon.
Oh yeah, so I guess we should. Do we want to talk about the Rock beard now?
Yeah, what about the rock beard? Isn't just that it's interesting that they did that? As in, you like it, dislike it, or neutral on it?
I was saying, Diggy's throwing out the beard there. I Here's the thing, I think the beards. It was a thing you never really think of with the thing because you never think it's like the Hellboy horns where it would grow if not maintained. But then here's the thing: I think it kind of opens the door of like, if you can grow a beard, why can't he grow the hair? And it's. I think it works as a joke of like, okay, so we got to conserve power, so he's going to let the beard grow. I really don't think you should have had it at the very end of the movie, though. I think that's where we should have lost the beard. Time has passed. They got power back. He would logically shave the beard.
I think it gives him a very unique look.
Yeah, no, it's a
Yeah, but
fun gag. It's a cool.
it would have been hilarious if he got to like I don't know how you could do it visually, but like shave it down to like either like a 5 o'clock shadow or somehow like a soul patch, like somewhere like I don't know how you can
Nah,
do it
come
without.
on. That would never look good.
I mean, it'd be just for like a gag, like in a post credit scene or whatever. But it is interesting that the thing can grow facial hair because the only time which the thing is depicted as having facial hair. So in Jonathan Hickman's run, there is like a issue where Reed and an adult version of Franklin from the future, they both travel to like several years or centuries or whatever down the line, and like Ben being kind of being the thing, he basically has some level of immortality, and over a certain period of time, like he grows his like very long, beard,
Yeah.
old man beard. So it was interesting to kind of make a nod to that.
Yeah, here's the thing. Look, I don't like him with the beard, but I think as a joke and like they had just like something to visually show the dire straits. I think it looks good, but when we just kind of keep him with it, it just feels like there's no way he would like to keep that thing on. Like, come on, someone's gonna tell him it looks ridiculous. I don't know. That's just me. All right, let's see. So he's an excellent pilot, and I love he's an excellent pilot. He's a fighter. He's very much we like I said we're hitting all the familial dynamics. I love that he has a very pivotal role during the birth of the baby. He's very good in the chase scene. We nailed the thing, and I don't know, we just did right by him. Speaking of doing right by him, Herbie was an awesome design. I love the analog tape deck
Mm-hmm.
face thing. He's very much a member of the family. He's a little sidekick. It's really cute seeing him all like Johnny's like petting him on the head or giving him a little scratch like he's a pet or something. It's cute.
Yeah, and I kind of appreciate that they kind of went for like an R2D2 kind of vibe. They didn't have him be like a speaking. I mean, part of it's like to save costs. The fact that Herbie's voiced by Matthew Wood, someone from Lucasfilm, that's obviously kind of a fun thing to bring up. And I think like the way that he has like specific protocols, like there's the home domestic, cassette you put for Herbie, and then when they have to go up into space. Yeah, that I think is really cool.
Jacob, you want to tell him which Star Wars character Matthew Wood plays?
General Grievous.
Yeah.
Mhm. I am very curious, like when the FF become fully merged in MCU, like what does Herbie look like? Because it's like that's the thing. I mean, we'll discuss more at the end, but with sort of how unique and dynamic the '60s retrofuturism it all is for the FF, like when you get integrated in the MCU, like how much do you retain versus how much do you kind of change to be contemporary in nature?
Every time, here's the thing. So, I love the take on Herbie that we have in the movie. But when I think of Herbie, I think of there's an obscure Herbie that I think of. I think of the Herbie from Fantastic Four: World's Greatest Heroes, like I forget if it was a Canadian animation studio that produced that or not. It was the same studio that did Marvin's Mysteries, but they did that Fantastic Four show, and the Herbie there was kind of like essentially he was like Jarvis, but he was like Jarvis, like localized to the building itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Baxter Building and Herbie are very much one and the same, and he would be very, kind of patronizing. It was kind of funny.
I see.
Yeah. Well, there's this one instance where he's like they got shrunk for an episode. And Ant-Man was a guest star in the episode. They had a lot of good guest stars in that show. It's worth watching. I think it's on Disney Plus. If anyone feels inclined to, I don't know. I kind of liked it more than the original Fantastic Four show, but I never really gave the '90s one like a proper shot because just I could never get past the art style. But anyway,
Of the
so,
'90s or the World's Greatest Heroes one?
no, the '90s. Honestly, there was a shift between the first two seasons. You look at the first season, the '90s Fantastic Four. It's got kind of got that. Kind of has that rubbery kind of look to it, where it's a lot like it's kind of like we're coming out of the Captain Planet era of cartoons. Like we're kind of like we're making the shift. You know what I mean? Kind of like that. There's the GI Joe style, which is really stiff because again, they're basically they're action figures that are animated. Then you have Captain Planet, that's kind of like the next stage, and of course, then we get into kind of our firm. Then you have X-Men, which is kind of like it's a little we're moving along. Then we get like the more definitive kind of like the Bruce Timm kind of style, where it's a lot more fluid motion. So we're just kind of like going through, it's like an evolution to kind of how the '90s really approached like character animation. But it's a whole anyway. Getting off track. So let's talk. So our main plot. This is basically our kind of our route to getting to getting the Galactus of it all. But Jacob, are there any comments you would like to discuss or throw up or anything?
I wonder how much Herbie will upgrade it when the F4 makes it to the main MCU.
I had to imagine like Herbie would be kind of like a floating kind of a robot, kind of like Skeets.
That would make sense. I would probably, I'm thinking a little bit like GI Robot from, from Creature Commandos. When we updated him, he could float when he kind of went in the battle mode. It would make sense.
Yeah, maybe there's more like of a touchscreen interface for like Herbie's face instead of like the analog kind of deal.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so I think Herbie and Dummy would get along famously. That'd be cute.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So again, long story short, the plot here: we adapt the Coming of Galactus story from the comics and the Silver Surfer story, but proper here. So we have the Herald. This case being the Shalaba version of the Silver Surfer. She shows up and dooms the planet. We have the it's the she encourages everyone to settle their affair, get their affairs in order, because we don't really say they only have 8 days, but they say basically Galactus is coming. So Doom is they've been targeted for death.
Yeah.
So the whole going with Shalaba versus Norrin Rad thing. So I'm of two minds about it. At the end of the day, it doesn't hurt the film, but I don't think it helps the film either. I'm not crazy about it, but it's not a problem. I just from the beginning, ever since they announced this, I had this thing, and I still kind of have it, where it feels like everything else in this movie is so definitive. Like, as in, we only get one bite at the apple. We want to get everything is like the verisimilitude of it all, like off the page and everything. It just feels like it's a weird choice that the answer to why they do this choice really feels like, okay, look, it's a different universe. We want to just not either we can't top or you just don't want to do like the Doug Jones, Lawrence Fishburne, Tim Story iteration of it again because they did it really well. It's the one thing we can't really top. We don't want to just do that again. But still, it just feels like that's always going to be like, oh my God, this is like, watch this. This captures the thing perfectly. But it's not that it's a button of negative, but it's a button but this is a different version of the Silver Surfer. And that's when you've lost everyone you're trying to sell Fantastic Four. Well, there's like two versions of it's.
I mean, I think for what this movie does, I think Shia LaBeouf makes sense. I think Johnny really shines as a character because of his involvement and interest in Shia LaBeouf. And so I think it's kind of interesting, fun, like for Rise of Silver Surfer, like the one FF character that Silver Surfer has a connection to is with Sue Storm, and then in this it's Johnny Storm. So it's the Storm siblings will always have an end with the Silver Surfer or the Herald of Galactus. I think with what Shia LaBeouf is, what's interesting, I don't know if you thought of this. I kind of thought of this just like a few hours before we started this, is that the fact that Shia LaBeouf was like a mom that like sacrificed herself to save her world and her child. It's like inadvertently there is kind of this interesting parallel with her and Sue Storm. And it's kind of weird that the movie never really capitalized on it and like thematically, or that there's really much interaction between her and Sue Storm, or even in the fact that Johnny didn't really like comment or make that kind of like parallel there. I think for what Shia LaBeouf is, as a little surfer, she's fine. And I think part of in my mind is like, man, I kind of wish she had the sort of Shakespearean flair that like Silver Surfer has, but that's really specific to Norrin. I think for what the movie is, it works in service of her having a bit of a parallel that's not really super capitalized on with Sue Storm, and her having this sort of dynamic with Johnny Storm. And I figure for Norrin Rad, when he does show up in Silver Surfer, they probably will have something in mind that will be in spirit with that character and his relationships with the Fantastic Four, that isn't just retreading on stuff that's been done with Rise of the Silver Surfer. I think with Shia LaBeouf, how she's set up and what she does in the story, works well because it can only be Shia LaBeouf. I don't think if you had Norrin Rad, I think it's a matter of topping it, but it's like, what can you do interestingly enough with Norrin Rad that wasn't already been done? I guess, yeah, you're saying, I am trying to say that like it is probably a lesser version of what is done in 2007. I think with Shia LaBeouf, her having the interesting origin, her having the unique look that she has, and her having the relationship that she has with Johnny Storm, I think those are things that like make the movie. Yes, it's supposed to be the definitive FF, but it being Elseworlds, there should be some level, of interest, to try something different. I mean, think of the fact that like this movie, it's a utopia. The FF, when they show up in the comics, like Marvel Comics is supposed to be the world outside your window. The world didn't change much with the FF being brought into the picture. So I think this movie being this utopia, I think there's some creative liberty that it can take. But if you're, obviously, if you want the Norrin Rad to show up and like have his prominence, I feel like that's something we can see down the line, hopefully sooner than later, depending upon, when and where he shows up.
Well, okay, well, a few things. So with what's presented in the movie, what we have presented, you're right. It's an interesting idea that if we're going to do Shia LaBeouf, the main reason to do her is like, okay, so if we give her like the kid, now we give like an olive branch to sell the Silver Surfer on turning against Galactus. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that would, I think, would maybe more necessitate like, okay, if we're going to do kind of use the Elseworlds thing, that would really play. But again, the movie that we have, that's the cut I'm more concerned about than the John Malkovich, cameo.
No, if there's any story elements that probably were cut and might have negatively impacted this movie, I think stuff relating to Shia LaBeouf's character, I think could have been, assuming there was stuff to really, flesh out her character. That I think would have been helpful.
Because they've cut that, it feels kind of pointless to kind of go with that version of the Silver Surfer. Because Norrin Rad could have had a daughter. Why not? It just feels like that's kind of ultimately what I'm left with. but just like, kind of cutting that, not really doing a lot with her aside from, okay, so we've, Johnny's kind of like, here's the thing. Human Torch is always kind of causally linked with the Solar Surfer because he's the guy who gives chase to the Solar Surfer, which is what we did in the last movie and what we do here. Only here, it's like, he's gonna make, she's attractive. He's gonna make goo eyes with the chrome surfer. We're not overplaying it, which is good, but still.
I think with what's done with Johnny and Charlotte Ball is interesting because it's not like Johnny just like romantically wins over Charlotte Ball and then that's how things change over. I think that's kind of what Joseph Quinn was trying to get at, is that like Johnny Storm, he's a romantic, he's a womanizer, but it's not like it's his whole personality. And I think through him being interested in Charlotte Ball and wanting to like be a good uncle, he maybe puts in a little bit more brain power than we normally have to, and is maybe more responsible. And I think because of that, Johnny Storm just shines more as a character rather than just is someone that like, it's funny to watch, but isn't like a character with a lot of depth. I think that's where Charlotte Ball, I think, is made the way she is because she helps to bring a lot out of Johnny Storm beyond just the womanizer element.
Well, she adds to the gag, like, okay, they're expecting him to be, again, like, Johnny popular with the ladies, and it's going to be one of those things. And of course, it's a subversion of that, which is what you get from it. I can recognize that, sure.
And also, I think with like how open, with the fact that like Johnny has hooked up or has been romantically involved with aliens, in the comics, it's probably just, hey, Johnny's not a guy that just is a womanizer of like regular Earthwoman. He'll womanize anyone.
Right. So, I mean, I just don't know if that's a good enough reason, again, without like the scenes that were missing to really get like the full impact from her, because it feels like as anyone, like Johnny just could have made that plea to another human being at the end, just given what he specifically does, and we don't really have like a connect that would really like be like mother to mother, or like, with the whole, when he does like the big awesome like linguistics trick at the end there. I don't know. Fundamentally, I'm just kind of afraid. We've done this before with the MCU, and it's just kind of sad at this point where we are. Not that it impacts this movie directly, but I'm just saying in general, it just feels like it'll be a thing where we get the multiverse. We get a multiverse. Okay, we're going to change this or do this a little differently here, but rest assured, down the line, we're either going to throw you a bone with like, here's what it actually would have looked like in kind of a smaller capacity. It's more one for one what you wanted, or the hope that, okay, eventually we're going to do like the traditional version that you're used to. That would be those going to make a lot of people happy, or a course correction or some other, any number of things. Like, think about it. We get the Mandarin, then eventually we get the actual Mandarin. It's really cool.
Yeah, I don't feel like Charlotte being in this movie, like, and like the fact that we'll get Norrin Rad down the line, I don't think it's gonna be like, we're just course correction.
But I don't think we're gonna get Norrin Rad unless it's gonna be a blink and you miss, like not a blink and you miss it, can, but like a small, like, okay, and there he is, but we're not really gonna, we can't just do the Silver Surfer again because we already did that story.
Well, I mean, I think you could do. I think here's the thing. I think, let's say Peter Parker, if he ever has a chance to interact with any of the MCU equivalents of the villains he encountered in No Way Home, I think the fact that he's aware of these alternate versions can probably impact relationship has, and maybe these characters could be unique and different enough, and maybe through Peter's relationship, he might inadvertently cause them to still become the villain.
The Rohith, that's my point, though. That's all great, but we just keep doing this where it's like we're clinging to hope that that's going to happen, and it still hasn't.
I'm like, I mean, I guess maybe part of it for me is that
like right now there's murmurs of Norman Osborn, which, I mean, would be great, but this is the thing where we're getting like, hey, we get Norman Osborn in the animated Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. We've had a Norman Osborn in No Way Home, which is great. And you're right, though. We can carry. That's the way to do that. It's like we would have him like be cognizant of like things could go this way, or he's going to maybe have like a hesitation when he comes up to an Osborn. Mm-hmm. But again, it's either taken so long, or like they're really, if Sony's like, like they're clutching the pearls. It's just, it's not, it's not happening. Even when it does happen, it's going to be, it's, I don't know how much of it's going to be like, we got to hope for like a Deadpool Wolverine situation in which we can actually get away with like bringing him in or something, or doing something tantamount to like, okay, here's what the actual thing looks like.
I guess for me, I'm not so, not to say you're impatient, but I'm not just eagerly anxious to see, the MCU versions of those things, or the proper way of doing those things. Because for me, part of the fun of comics and part of the fun of like superhero movies, especially when you deal with the multiverse, is you get to have fun, interesting takes on these characters. And I could trust that like down the line, the classic what is deemed the classic versions will show up. So I think for me, it's like if we're in the multiverse saga, if we're dealing with different altered takes and characters, I think I'm okay with not seeing the classic versions. And I think part of it is that we already have the classic versions depicted. And yes, we would like to see the classic versions seen in this universe, this context, but I don't have a desire to see it right away. If there's an opportunity to do some things that can subvert or switch things up to maybe things keep fresh. And I feel like in Marvel's mind, I think the logic is that you need to have some level of time and distance to eventually, when those characters show up, it's relatively fresh and new. Now, however that long is, it varies from person to person. But I think for me, the fact that both these characters and properties have characters that have never been depicted in any prior adaptations, I'm wanting to see those characters come about. Not to say to push them like so down the line, but I'm not in a hurry to see the characters have been depicted in the past and very recently just to be brought back in this new context. I'm very open.
It's not about being in a hurry, or it's not about impatience. It's just about it's like Mandarin's like the only example we have where they actually got around to doing it, and it just feels like it just feels like if I'm explaining like, oh, don't worry, eventually they're gonna do this to somebody, so you're out of your mind. Or like why it's like to an average Joe, it's like it just makes you look like a crazy person. It's like, oh, okay, I'm sure down the line they're gonna do this. And they can take their time. But it's like it's a lot of blind faith that's going on there. That's what kind of concerns me. It's going to be a long while of something that may or may not happen. If it does happen, it'll be like we're going to do it via the multiverse, which historically has not really gone well for them. At least with the whole hey, we're doing all these multiverse takes, and then we've kind of confused how the multiverse works until Deadpool Wolverine, which kind of closed the book on that kind of. And I mean, we're getting the whole Secret Wars may bring back that multiverse payoff that we're looking for. I mean, probably will, but
I mean, yeah, I guess it's really just a matter of should one have a huge benefit of the doubt and level of faith that Marvel can when they eventually bring back classic versions of characters that there be done justice. Yeah, probably I feel like for me, the MCU, while it is supposed to be a universe that's taking adaptations and definitive takes on these characters, the MCU is its own distinct universe that has its own logic, has its own way of going about stories. So I kind of am willing to give some level of leniency and leeway that whenever those characters are to be introduced, they're introduced when they need to be introduced. And I think it's just a matter of that there's just not the right story yet to just bring them in as soon as they're. That's I think that for Spider-Man, I think he has so many other characters to be introduced and go through. I don't feel the need to see Norman Osborn coming back again, especially since we saw him No Way Home.
Well, yeah. We have other things to do with Spider-Man right now. The main thing is
I think with that
hang out with Daredevil. That's the main thing.
But I think with FF is the same as well. It's like with Silver Surfer already done well enough, and it being relatively recent enough. That's like 17 years. I guess recent is probably too much of a stretch. No pun intended. I think because I know there's been consistent rumors and discussions about Silver Surfer being a very prominent character in the next saga. And I just know that I think with them wanting to build out the cosmic side of things post Secret Wars, I definitely feel like Silver Surfer is going to be a prominent part of that. And maybe I think the FF will definitely be a part of that. I mean, I just have faith. Is that faith 100% warranted? Maybe not to you or to other people, but I think with the way this movie is done, I have faith that they know what they're doing with FF. How they're going to implement them, integrate the MCU is one thing, but the essence of those characters are done well. That whenever Silver shows up, it's going to make sense. It's going to connect with FF in a way that works. So that's it. It's just a matter of faith.
Anyway, so Fantastic Four. They the Herald shows up, tells us we're doomed. Galactus going to feed on the planet. The Fantastic Four, they're in problem solving mode. They go to space. to negotiate with Galactus and hopefully save the Earth. So this again is a great way of like, and we're not doing the origin story, but we're returning to the origin, but kind of smarter in a sense of like Reed Richards in a is kind of this is kind of his opportunity for redemption of like a space mission with his family going well and saving the world. I love that we're using I love we call the rocket the Excelsior, by the way.
Yeah, very much in line with Stanley and the New York of it all.
Yep. So let's see. So so basically, we're basically tailing the surfer to Galactus. The trail of the surfer to get to Galactus. Okay, let's see. Earlier on, so Tiki in the comments, he called BS on Sue traveling while pregnant.
I figure with how advanced the technology is of this world and the fact that Sue Storm is a superhero, that has powers that can put her in a defensive capability, and the fact that her kid is like a super baby, I feel like the rules that would apply for typical pregnant women may not necessarily apply 100% for someone like Sue Storm.
I mean, with Fantastic Four, and we've seen this in like pretty much all the permutations, but especially in the first Tim Story movies, like Fantastic Four, like peak optimacy. They work at their best when it's all four of them like working together. Like it doesn't work like they can't take down Doctor Doom if it's just like one of them.
It's not the Triple Three.
Yeah, so the dynamic duo. Yeah. It's got to be it's got to be the whole team. And again, she's the glue. She especially Ross. She's really warranted because she's the diplomat. Presumably, so she would be the one to take on this mission. Anywho, she I love the detail that I think this probably I think helps make it more palatable. Is that if they're worried about something, there's a problem. She can make her belly invisible, which like see through. Which is I love that. It's a weird bit, but it's a weird bit that makes sense. And also, it's interesting. They met Shakeman. He kind of has kind of a runner between WandaVision and this of like kind of the pregnancy story. Kind of mothers and children, the children who possess powers, and the whole, kind of some similarities. Scarlet Witch and her kids, and Sue Storm and Franklin.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, let's see. So the point being, they go to Galactus. So let's talk about Galactus. We nailed him so well. He's big, he's imposing, he's in the giant ship. I love that he's in the giant ship. We went full classic Kirby on this one.
Yeah, and the fact that Ralph Ineson was in the suit and he had makeup on like his mouth area, and his freaking voice is just God. He sounds like a cosmic entity.
I was little like you once.
Yes.
But yeah, so I was. What do you think? Okay, because my fear with this, now mind you, the whole separation with the '60s setting and everything, I think really helps with this. But still, I was afraid of like the Eternals really ruining Galactus in terms of we saw like a giant kind of like Galactus headed esque, kind of like the way the Celestial with like the protruding and everything. So it was giant. It was it reached the city at the end of that movie. It's like, oh well, there goes our giant man. We've done our giant man already. Now Galactus is gonna be what? He's a slightly smaller giant man. But he felt like an imposing force. He felt, we had the size, we had the scale. He dwarfs the, the Statue of Liberty. It just felt like classic Kirby, where it's like I've seen like there's a Spider-Man comic where Spider-Man. If memory serves, it was a thing where Spider-Man was on a movie set and they had like the like all the heroes of Marvel like fighting a giant special effects version of Galactus, but he was like a scaled giant like Galactus man in the city that all the heroes could conceivably fight, which we kind of have in the third act of this. So this is what I expect with Galactus. He's scaled down appropriately, but he's huge, he's imposing, he's connected. to the ship. And he's strong and yet he's weak at the same time. He needs the feed, so it's like there's the whole expenditure of energy, like kind of wiggle room in how to defeat this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like him, like it's having to be connected to the like tubes in his Tatu ship, and basically it's not like people think it's like he literally just like chomps on a planet like it's an apple. It's like just more like the planet is destroyed and is converted into like a substance or type of material that he can, It's not like he
It's
like
basically a puree.
yeah, that he just gets feeded through
It's like the RoboCop baby food.
Yeah, and it's like feeded through him like through an IV, essentially.
That was a really cool way of looking at it. I like that we kind of see like the IV kind of pay off later on with like the lava coming out. Mr. Fantastic, like he kind of pries open like one of the ports.
Yeah.
I always read, I mean, look, I'm not praising the Cloud. I'm not. But I am gonna say I liked the concept in Rise of the Silver Surfer that, the Silver Surfer shows up. He creates like these giant like holes, and we kind of saw this in like Superman animated series with Darkseid in the Apocalypse Now episode, where essentially you have these giant holes that were in the Superman episode. Was like the idea he was trying to make a fire, trying to turn the Earth into Apocalypse with like the fire pits and everything. Basically, these giant holes that flames would come out on the planet, a very heavy metal cover version of the Earth. So Rise of Silver Surfer, the idea is like Silver Surfer goes around globally. He drills like these giant endless holes into the planets, and the idea is that Galactus would come again, hopefully more than just a cloud, but ultimately it wasn't. And he would like almost like stick his fingers into the holes and like not literally chomp down the plant, but that would be like he would like absorb the energy like through the giant holes in the plant. That would be like two hands like wrapping around the plant almost,
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, I'm extrapolating on the hands thing. My point being like the idea like the ship or whatever force you had would connect to like these holes in the planet that were just like in the whole like it took 8 days to do this, and like it's 8 holes kind of a thing. But anyway, I like the logic that we applied to it using the ship and the more traditional things. That was cool. So it's interesting. Galactus, I always loved in the scene that Galactus has. He only has like 2 scenes with the Fantastic Four, and the big scenes for a big guy. He respects the Fantastic Four for making the journey and trying to negotiate with them. Again, with the whole like I was little like you once thing, but just the reveal that the baby has the power cosmic. It's been hiding it from, despite all the tests that Reed and Sue did on the baby to figure out if it had a power or anything. The fact that the baby like hides its power, it's like, oh boy. And you're wondering, like, oh god, is Galactus crazy? Is he deluded? Is the baby active? Does he actually have abilities? Like, that's what theirs probably running through their minds. And just this idea that Galactus is looking for a success. This is very Mobius Galactus says. It's like that the last days of Galactus story where Galactus is like dying and he's trying to make amends with the Silver Surfer kind of a thing where he it's like he's looking for a successor to stop the hunger and stop the burden. Like Galactus making himself the victim. Like, yes, this is the Galactus I like. Yes, he's not just like mustache twirly evil. He's feeding because it's just he's got to eat something. To quote the Hoppers trailer, he's got to eat something.
I kind of wish they emphasized a little more the fact that like Galactus, it's not like he wants to eat planets. He has to, and it's kind of like a weird thing where it's like, oh, Galactus is one of the big villains of that fat. It's like, well, it's like, are we villains for? I mean, depending on if you ask like a very.
It's not like Galactus is coming back like every month or so. He's.
But like it's like the way like the thing is it's like, oh, like I feel like it would have been cool to emphasize like, hey, like I if I could have the choice to not eat, I could, but I can't. But I feel like the way he was like, all right, I'll eat your world slowly. He's like, God damn, Galactus, you're just like now you're just being vindictive just because this family won't give you their kid to be their successor.
Yeah.
Man.
Anyway, So it's a hard no. Like, no, we're not going to give you our child to save the Earth. So they run, they escape. But this is honestly one of the best parts of the whole movie here. The chase home and the birth in space, I was like on the edge of my seat. This was an awesome and crazy sequence. It's so tense. Like, the fact they're trying to take out the fact the Silver Surfer like does like the phasing, the weird, kind of weird organic kind of phasing thing that it did carry over from the Tim story once. It was like a cool quality that we were able to maintain, where she kind of oozes through the ship, and she's like the hand is on the belly, and it's like we went to hyperspace, like the last possible second. Like, oh my god, it was like this was incredible filmmaking. I thought the idea of having this chase, and like the beams are bending around the space of the wormhole,
and then Johnny's like figures out to use that to his advantage.
yeah, and all this is happening. The fact, I love how wall to wall like crazy intense it is, where the only way to escape the Silver Surfer is to basically, kind of bank like kind of like a turn around a black hole, which is, which is crazy. It's dangerous. It's like, again, it's kind of the idea of like, now they don't spell this out in the movie. I have a headcanon thing. I don't think it's at all correct. It's just like, is a thought I had, is that maybe we mentioned time dilations. Now, I think the way it's intended to be is like, okay, this is what's going to buy him time against the Silver Surfer and Galactus. I think that's the main thing with the time dilations. A part of me in the movie was thinking when they come back, like might have been like in a different era or something, or maybe like a lot of time has passed, and they're like, "Where were you, Fantastic Four?" But the way I kind of read it is that it might have been. This is why Franklin has powers, because this was like kind of at something tantamount to like the cosmic radiation in space. Like, it was like a big event, like near a black hole and everything, where time and all sorts of stuff, or maybe if he had potential or abilities, maybe it got accelerated by the dilation of birth in space. Like I said, it's an unfounded but fan theory headcanon that maybe this is what led to Franklin getting his powers.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure Franklin has his powers from the get go, right? Because
No, you're right. Well, wait, why do you think so?
Galactus was like, hey, the child has the power cosmic in him. He hides his nature from you. It's like he's clearly has his powers. It's just not.
So that's why that's why I think I'm wrong. But by the same token, I do wonder if Galactus has a cosmic awareness. Maybe it's like it's like a foretold kind of a thing, where he knows, like, in saying no, they're gonna give chase, and these events are gonna unfold, and then by the end he will have the child. Like I said, it's very thin what I'm throwing out there, but that's kind of what I thought maybe it was going with, is that he knew this would happen, and the black hole would unlock the kid's powers, which he needs.
I mean, I feel like he would make that clear. It's like your child will soon have the power, and I feel like the fact that he kind of forced Sue to have an early pregnancy, early birth, like
that was crazy that he induced the labor. That was
like I think it's very good that like Franklin's got the power, and it's just a matter of I think that I think the fact that Reed doesn't know that his kid has powers like kind of speaks to the fact that
it's a great moment where Reed's like, he's done everything to prepare for this birth, and then he's like dropping like, oh, your kid does have powers despite all the tests that you've taken to know for sure.
Yeah, I think the fact, honestly, because the thing is like in the comics, Franklin's just you, and like I don't know if like the X gene was noticed or whatever, but there was some awareness.
Like, Franklin gave himself the X gene. It's a whole thing.
Well, no, I think it's retcon, but go over me on this. It's like, it's interesting that Franklin has the power cosmic. I think maybe I don't know if he's going to be made into mutant. I assume he will, and maybe like his mutant abilities, like accessing the power cosmic, just as like Cyclops access that one dimension with his optic beams. And I think part of it is that the power cosmic is maybe such an ancient like form of energy that wouldn't be like, that's like predates the known universe. Like Reed's test wouldn't be able to account for something that like ancient and foreign.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, I was very sure I was wrong on that whole thing. But yeah, so the point being, the sequence itself, though, I love that it's, I love the tension. Like, we're trying to do this very risky, like, kind of slingshot maneuver thing. And then, also she's giving birth and, like Ben's catching the baby. It's like this, it's this wonderfully insane, jam packed, edge of your seat kind of a thing. Like, the sorcerer's getting sucked into a black hole, but clearly she's going to be able to get out of it. It's a phenomenal sequence.
Yeah,
It's on brand for the FF, right?
Wait, what?
It's on brand for the FF, isn't
Oh,
it?
absolutely. And I think the fact that like all four members are have their moments to shine and they're working as a collective unit and team is just that's how you do the FF in action. It's very interesting, Dragon, that this movie doesn't have as much action as I would have expected. Which I think in one part it really helps to push the sci-fi of it all, but another part maybe people might not like be thinking that this movie like has like the oomph factor or like the thing that like makes people go see repeat viewings in the movie.
Yeah.
Because at least in terms of the box office, it's performing about on the same as Superman, maybe slightly below that. So, and with both movies kind of being the same vibe and same approach, it's interesting that to see like how both those movies leg out.
Yeah. All right, let's see. So, okay, so we return home. Little baby Franklin's born. We have the press conference scene is really great. I love Pascal's acting during this press conference. They just get back. They've been through this harrowing experience, and he just Reed Richards saying "I don't know" is a very powerful thing. That guy knows everything, and him just saying "I don't know" to the public, like, are we safe? And just the panic that unfurls, and the fact that Reed overshared like the truth and like telling him exactly what happened up there, and just the whole, like, it was a choice between our child and the Earth. Of course, leaving out the whole, like, no, we're gonna figure out another way here, but again, just like in the moment, just it's so there's a lot to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
So just and this is, again, another classic FF thing here, where it's like classic. The world either loves or hates the Fantastic Four, and sometimes, like it's the fact we kind of saw what the world's like when they loved the Fantastic Four. Now we're seeing just they turn their backs on them. It's very much like it's the baby or them.
Yep.
Which then leads to that scene you were talking about earlier, the argument between Reed and Sue, which is, again, he's playing the numbers of, like, look, this is the thing, these are the things we have to consider. And I identified so much with Reed Richards there, where it's like, you gotta sometimes you gotta say the things that aren't popular, but you just have to entertain. Like, okay, look, just to entertain all negative outcomes there. This is this would be a logical play. We're not gonna do it, but it would make sense, or at least it makes sense. This is why people are feeling this way, and this is like that's why they would like turn against us like this, because and ultimately he's right. And Sue kind of recognizes that, but she's very hurt in the moment by it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's see. So after Sue, they really nice moment is Vanessa Kirby. I don't mean to kind of sleep on like all the good stuff she's doing in this movie, but I do love like the scene where she kind of like this is like she represents like the charm of Sue Storm, where she goes outside and she basically introduces the world to the baby and just kind of makes her plea like, look, we're all family here, okay, and we're not gonna. It's kind of like almost like we're not gonna trade lives, Captain, kind of a moment. Anyway, so she kind of gets everybody on board, and then the whole like move heaven and earth for our child thing. This gives Reed the idea, and it was like such an ancillary little like like he demonstrates the teleporter to Johnny with the egg, and it's like, oh my god, what if the Earth was the egg? What if we built like a giant form of the teleporter, and that would be our way? Like we move the planet from Galactus idea, which is great. Like short of an ultimate nullifier, this is how we can deal with Galactus. We run, we pull a bait and switch on them.
Yeah, no, and I think the fact that it was kind of establishing the whole egg of it all. I think it was a nice touch, and I think some people are like, well, could this be the way how the FF like show up in like the MCU in Avengers Doomsday? Or
I
like,
was thinking the same thing for a moment. Like if this goes successfully, that might be our ending. So honestly, based on the marketing, the school of thought I heard, and I was really subscribing to this theory, was that given how utopia-esque this universe that the Fantastic Four find themselves in is, it did stand to reason then, just given even at the beginning of the movie, I was still on this track until this point, where I was thinking, oh God, maybe the fan theory is right about this movie, where they're promising nothing's going to change, and like we're like, hey, are we safe? Things are looking really bad. It's like, oh, again, they don't have an ultimate nullifier. This makes me think they might fail. That might be how we check in with the Fantastic Four. It's like, yes, their first steps in the MCU, but like as an exodus. Like they're going to fail, and Galactus going to take over. They themselves will get out of Dodge at the last second. They're going to feel really guilty about the whole world going to pot and Galactus winning.
Yeah, I feel like in retrospect that probably wasn't a valid thing to think about, because this movie's so marketed as a very upbeat, optimistic, forward-thinking
But
movie.
that would have been the bait and switch, though. That would have been you're expecting that.
And it would have been bait and switch, but then like when you watch the movie, because think of it this way, like let's say if it did happen, when you go into Doomsday and Secret Wars, it's like the FF are just failed hero. I feel like it'd be more interesting to see. I think because the way the FF are at the end of the movie, they're basically successful public superheroes, and I think it'd be interesting to see. You read or know of JLA Adventures, right?
Yeah.
So you know how like when the heroes switch to the different universes, the JLA are like, oh, this world sucks, and like the heroes are just disrespected, mutants are oppressed, and then the Avengers like these guys are like fascists. They're just get adulation and love. There's no room for criticism or anything like that. And I think because Pedro Pascal mentioned in an interview that like some characters in the MCU will be in the Earth 828 and Doomsday. And it would be interesting to see that kind of maybe not 1-to-1, but that kind of.
You can't trust anything the actors have been saying about the movie because they don't know anything that's going on. Let's be honest.
I mean, him mentioning that these characters will, like some of the MCU characters will be in Earth 828 is like
they don't know what movies they're shooting right now. They only know is like they're shooting.
They're shooting Doomsday right now.
No, that's what I'm saying. They're shooting Doomsday. They're shooting back to back. Though they don't know what movie.
They're not shooting them back like that. Back.
Are you sure? Because that's how they did. That's how we did Endgame and Infinity War.
No,
I'm pretty sure the Russos shooting. Then they're pretty much going to come out.
I know they're shooting just Doomsday right now.
You're sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they would that'd be something that would have been mentioned or reported on. It's like, oh, Doomsday. No, like specifically the Russos did not want to film these movies back to back, and the fact that the fact that both movies are in December, I think you can have like some breathing room and then shoot them. That's not to say, I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't think it would be far the possibility for the FF to come to the MCU and vice versa. And then like the FF was like, God, this world sucks. And these heroes don't know, like have a hold on things. And then maybe for the heroes, like think of it this way. Imagine if you're a citizen of the MCU or a hero in the MCU, you come to the FF's world, to Utopia, and then here it's like, oh, all the nations of the world have demilitarized their forces. And it's like these four guys essentially rule the planet. They're not like authoritarian or fascistic, but like they kind of run. It's like think with like there's never any superhero story that has superheroes run the world where them running the world isn't made out to be like a bad thing, right? So I think that'd be interesting, like creative tension to highlight on, and maybe have some level of distrust or whatever. But that's not the. But we'll see what Doomsday looks like. I think that's just something that is interesting to think about. That like it's not that these heroes are celebrities; they're basically run the world. They made the world in their own image or their vision, and they run it to a certain extent.
Okay. All right, let's see. So, let's see, where are we in the midst of? Right, yeah. So that's the thing. So you're kind of wondering. So at this point, you're thinking, yeah, if we did kind of like teleport them to the MCU, but then semantically, it's like, okay, so we have like two Earths that are really close proximity to each other. So I was thinking maybe that wouldn't happen, but I was unsure.
Well, I mean, they can just be in the same universe, not be occupying the same space, right? Like,
Yeah, but you gotta remember, we always had like we had to figure out the whole blip and like post blip semantics, So there's a lot of
no, that's what I'm saying. Is that you could have the Earth be like just at the opposite end of like the Milky Way or the universe or whatever, and then if the FF already have like FTL technology, like they could easily get to like MCU Earth.
there was actually I should mention this. There was a moment in this movie that I had some investment in. Besides all the other investment I had in the movie, but there was this for years I had kind of this like my pitch for what the Fantastic Four would be in the MCU, and like I got kind of like an answer, like an equivalent to it in this movie where I always kind of theorized the way the M. This is before we knew like, oh my god, we could actually set it in the '60s somehow. I wasn't thinking about their multiverse way before. This is like way before this is like in 2015. I was like theorizing. It's like when we knew a Black Panther movie was on the way, that kind of thing, I always thought that the way we could do the Fantastic Four origin, Tiki and I, we did like these pitches for what our Fantastic Four movies would be. His was more like a Wes Anderson Fantastic Four. Mine was just more of like, what if Doctor Doom was kind of our lead character in a Fantastic Four? It's kind of funny how things ultimately worked out with that, but let's just, the importance of Doctor Doom in the MCU. But my pitch was in doing the origin of the Fantastic Four, what if basically they did, it was kind of what we saw in Captain Marvel. Like, what if Captain Marvel was like we had the Tesseract is like a power source for like for space travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if with the Fantastic Four they found an equivalent to what we see in Guardians of the Galaxy with the jump drive, where basically you make all the jumps and you have like that bit in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 where they did like too many jumps and like distorted reality and made them look really funky, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So my theory was like, what if we had an Earthbound like attempt at that? Like it was the Earth's version of trying to do like the jump point technology, and in doing so,
FTL.
yeah. What?
Like faster than light.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, and doing the faster than light thing, that would basically, what if that effect happened, and then then they end, but they didn't go back at the end. What if that's what turned them into the Fantastic Four? It was like basically kind of a misfire of an attempt at that, and that's what the origin of the fan. So the fact is, the reason I really is like we had that ring around them in the movie that allowed them to do the FTL.
Yeah.
So that that's, I'm just saying that was like seeing that. I was like, well, there you go. That's kind of their version of doing the the Guardians of the Galaxy jump. So that's that's kind of how they did that.
Well, and also that's something that we see in like Star Wars, where like ships can get onto like attach a weapon to do FTL jumps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what we saw with like Obi-Wan and like the like the little ship. Like the little, not the F. It's not the it's not the F-wing, but it's the others.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
X-wing, sorry. Okay. So, let's see. Okay, anyways, the point being, we have the egg plan. The Silver Surfer shows up, destroys all the gates across the planet except for one, which thankfully Johnny saves us too. But still, it was like all this great, like, oh no, not the, oh, we're so doomed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but of course Johnny has this big moment where he basically he kind of guilts the Silver Surfer using all like the translated, like basically we set this up really well in the movie that Johnny was interpreting. He was obsessed with. I was really wondering where we were going with this because it really sounded like it was really redundant at first, right? I thought it was like the Silver Surfer is basically like, Johnny, I think we can put two and two together. Yes, it's the Silver Surfer's voice, and yes, you can find out what she's saying, but it's like all you really know is like, okay, so she said stuff. In finding out that okay, this wasn't just her dialect. That was like how he picked up on like what the other languages were, and basically that's how he tracked her through that. But that's how, then in translating that, he found out all the other things people were saying in all the other planets that were destroyed so far, and that's how he like, oh my god, he plays it back for her, and he really makes her to listen to all the lives that she destroyed, and how like her why should your planet be so lucky, that kind of a thing. So she She kind of has a change of heart, at least the beginnings of a change of heart, which comes back in a really awesome way.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of nice. All right, so then they had the Hail Mary plan. We're gonna trick Galactus. We're gonna give him what he wants. He's gonna get the baby. We're gonna actually use this to teleport him away, just away. We want him far away, and without his ship, he'll die.
Which may or may not be true.
Well, of course, he's gonna be fine, but he's not gonna die. Galactus will be back. I suspect he'll be back, and when he comes back, we're gonna actually do the ultimate nullifier. Would be my guess, but I always loved the concept of the ultimate nullifier. It's the idea they bluffed Galactus.
Also, it's also like, how is that a technology you don't make every effort possible to keep secured and out of your enemy's hands?
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a funny idea. Just it's always like the funny, like just kind of the idea we bluffed like the the unstoppable force kind of a thing. But anyway, so the point being, that's the plan. They kind of bait and switch the baby. They kind of blind him for a moment. They do the switch, and it works until Galactus. At the last moment, they have kind of our matchstick moment here, where it's kind of like kind of our Pixar equivalent with the the matchstick moment, where it's the big subversion, where you the audience members, like, okay, here's the plan. It's going to go great. He's like inches away from it, and then he stops clever little bugs. Sees he picks up on the baby's signature, the power cosmic, and he's going to the Baxter building, which we see like the big Comic-Con visual, like giant Galactus face looking in there. Herbie locks it all up, but to no avail. It's a giant hand. And then it's kind of an Incredibles finale. It's like we're trying to save the baby. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's seriously, this is a solid. The MCU at times can struggle with the climax. Here we nailed the climax, man. This is like, we got action. We're doing like the classic Kirbyism of like four people fighting a giant man. They're clearly outmatched, but they're giving their all here.
I will say there's one negative flaw to say. I feel like they really hold back on Reed using his stretching powers because they didn't feel comfortable that they got the CGI and VFX right for that.
It would have been nice to see more stretching. I don't disagree, but it's here's the thing. Honestly, it would have been nice to see him like make a giant fist and punch something, But that's honestly the logic that they applied to the stretching is that it's kind of like the I don't have a good comparison. I was going to say it was kind of like maybe a bit of the Clayface thing, where it's like, or I guess Sandman done right or whatever. Is that fact that it's like they can't like expand the body to some degree. Mr. Fantastic, clearly he can do that in the comics and everything, but I think like if you were to apply a practical logic, it's like, okay, he can move. The way we do in the movie, it seems like he can stretch his body and move it, but he can't like make anything or make everything or really like
he's not like really Plastic Man level stretching.
Exactly, it's not Plastic Man. He's not doing like the Green Lantern. He's not thinking outside the box like the Green Lantern constructs, if you will. He's not.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wonder if maybe down the line he might be able to, but right now it just seems like the practical way they're doing it is like, okay, he can stretch, but it's either from a lack of imagination or he's just like physically he can't do that. Yeah. Which hopefully I would like to think maybe he can do that, and that this battle with Galactus might open his eyes to do that for like the next Avengers movies that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guess. Anyway, yeah. So still, though, it's really harrowing to see, like Mr. Fantastic almost gets like split in half by Galactus when he's like stretching and like he's pulling the Stretch Armstrong thing on him,
Yeah, I was kind of like, I was surprised that like he could feel some pain. It's like, oh, you can just kind of stretch Reed out, but like you said, he's not Plastic Man, so there probably is an upper limit to how far he can get stretched. Because I think because the thing is, if you make him to be like Plastic Man level, it's like it's kind of OP Reed. So yeah. you do need to kind of quote unquote nerf for just make him not too powerful.
Yeah, I got the got some Invincible season 3 vibes on that moment there.
I didn't think of that, but that's a good comparison.
A little bit, just a little bit in the moment, like, oh god, like clearly, he could stretch, but dear God, like the suit's starting to tear. Like, oh God, I mean, it's Galactus of all people. It's Galactus playing with Stretch Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah. So the point being, it's this heroin kind of game of hot potato with the baby. Like we kind of like toss the thing like a we do the big payoff if it's clobbering time. We throw them like a wrecking ball or something.
Yeah.
It's great. So I love the desperation in this climax. And speaking of which, again, so Sue demonstrates, kind of her maternal power, and it's kind of like she pushes her. I like this. It's not like Sue it's not her being the Scarlet Witch per se, but it's like the idea that Sue has something very powerful at her disposal. But even so, like Reed warns her, like, Sue, you got to stop because she's going to this is like the logic of like. Yeah, we've seen the Jessica Alba version of Sue Storm. It's from the comics. Like, gets a nosebleed if she does something really big with her powers.
I saw a tweet was like, man, it's nice to see Sue Storm use her power to full strength and not get a freaking nosebleed. It's like, did that happen in the Fan Force Kmart? I don't feel like it. Okay.
No, that didn't happen there. But it's like I'm pretty sure that didn't happen in Fan Four Stick. But she barely did anything, so she wouldn't really need it to happen. But either way. Still, though, it was like a nice moment from the comics, but you got to remember, though, when you do that now, you have the whole power scaling thing you got to worry about. Like, well, what would cause a nosebleed? And, like, as she gets stronger, then would be the next thing to cause a nosebleed. So, still, though, admittedly, if anything would give her the nosebleed, it probably would be this, but, if anything ever. But still, though, it's a very big moment where she uses literally all the strength she possibly has in the effort of saving her baby. She shoves him into the. I like this. It's not her like defeating Galactus single-handed. All she's doing is shoving the giant man backwards into the into the teleporter.
Yeah, I mean,
that's achievable. That seems like in doing so.
Yeah.
In doing so, it kills her.
I mean, it serves him right. You're the one that caused Sue to get into labor, so she can use all her might to push Galactus back.
So it was cool. It was a really great, like, it was a big Sue Storm moment there, and
and then when Galactus comes out and Johnny's about to make the sacrifice play, and it's subverted with Silver Surfer coming in,
big crowd cheer moment.
Yeah, I will say, Galactus basically his kryptonite is strong mothers.
Well, yeah, his kryptonite's Mother's Day.
Him and Batman.
Sure, Rohith, sure.
And Barry Allen.
Yeah. There's a lot of mommy issues with our Friends in Tights kids.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so point being, we defeat Galactus. We have this really big moment where Sue's dead, and I gotta admit, I felt it. I mean, I didn't think she was gonna stay dead, but still, I was. It's like what's gonna happen. The baby's gonna save her, but still, you feel the loss on Pascal, and he's like, Sue has died, and it's a real death after she hurt herself like that, and you feel, and you're hoping against you're hoping like, please let Franklin be able to revive her, and thank God he did. But like it wasn't without consequence, though. It was like we showed just how far it could have happened.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So the mother, the bond between mother and child, it saves her, and it was great. So then we have the we go back in the talk show, and we end with, which, by the way, is a nice little Gilbert and Sullivan joke. By the way, like, it's kind of a parody of Ed Sullivan, where it's like it's something Gilbert, where it's
Ted Gilbert.
Ted Gilbert, so it's cute.
Played by Mark Gatiss of Sherlock fame.
Yep. Mycroft.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So this was a great. I love the cute joke about like the five on like the baby. They were begging him to put the kid in like a little onesie with the 5 on it.
Yeah, that was really cute.
Yeah. Anyway, So I love we have a classic ending here where they're all like they all get the emergency buzz, and they exit, and I love in the exit. This I felt was like the perfect note to end the movie out on. The car seat gag is perfection. Like, yes, just see them struggle with that stupid car seat in the Fantastic Car, and then like onward and upward to adventure, which is like the classic, like tantamount to what it's the classic tenet what Excelsior means. Onward and upward to adventure, onward and upward to greatness, or whatever the exact the exact second definition of Excelsior is. The first definition is packing material. The second definition, though.
Yeah.
Point being, I thought it kind of represented everything. It needs mundanity. It's kind of like it's the next great adventure you're not going to see. It's like the perfect note you want to end out on with the Fantastic Four. It was great. So our post credit scene, the big post credit scene. We know the cartoon's kind of our gag post credit scene, which is a lot of fun. It's great fully seeing it. It's clobbering time with it all. It's nice. We actually get to see all the villains that were talked about in animation, which is great. But the real post-credit scene, we got to have the big 4 years later. So Franklin's now he's 4 years old. Dr. Doom shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is based on an image from the comics too, like Franklin or like Dr. Doom removing his mask in front of the kid like this. That's really I love that. That was really cool. But yeah, so they've confirmed that this was Downey Jr. on set when they shot this.
Yeah, or at least it's like a scene from Adventures Doomsday. And I'm very curious, is Doctor Doom from Earth 828? Because here's the thing, if he's from Earth 828, then Victor Von Doom didn't become Doctor Doom until very recently.
So here's where I come down. Here's the thought that I had in watching the movie when I saw that scene pop up. To me, unless, again, obviously Doomsday will probably clarify this. Again, it's always the speculation every time we talk about the MCU kids. But way I read it with this scene, we're committed. Because I was wondering going into the movie how much it was always going to be that proviso, which is kind of what I had with the Silver Surfer, with Doctor Doom as well. Of it's the age-old promises of the MCU. Of okay, look, we're gonna, Downey Jr. will be basically kind of our multiverse Doctor Doom, but we'll never know, at least not for a long while, will we know what the actual Doctor Doom of the Fantastic Four is. But what we see here, this confirms to me that because we have no other Marvel equivalent, no other Marvel heroes, or basically aside from those Fantastic Four characters in the universe of 828, that implies to me that Downey Jr. is that is their Doctor Doom. That is literally in their universe. That is essentially what our definitive take on Doctor Doom is, but via this multiverse.
It may be the Doctor Doom Earth 828, but because the thing is, Latveria has an empty seat, and the thing is, there could be a Victor Von Doom, but not a Doctor Doom, as in that he's taken over Latveria and is the leader of Monarch. Because if Doctor Doom was a known entity in this universe, in the time of the movie, it feels weird for him not to be mentioned as someone to look out for, to protect from his child, or to even consult in regards to solving the Galactus problem. And I feel like if Doctor Doom is from Earth 828, then he probably came about in between 1965 and 1969.
Well, that's an interesting point, Rohit. Here's the thing. You're right in that Reed would have, in the big scene where he says he's called the cops and everyone on every, he's wrestling this big sting operation for all the people he's going to worry about with the birth of his child. Doctor Doom would have to be factored in there. However, I don't know, when I saw that Latveria thing with the empty seat, to me, just given we're 4 years in, that my assumption was that Doctor Doom was a known entity, and that's think about it. When Sue walks back into the room and she sees this person with her kid, you could read it both ways. My read on it was that, she knows Doctor Doom, and that's why she's on her guard, prepared to take him out. But by the same token, be any stranger with their kid, she would have a very, it's a stranger danger. She would be prepared with the kids. So, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I think there's enough wiggle room that we could have, Reed Richards called this thing I mentioned all the immediate threats, and maybe he had stuff ready for Doctor Doom. We just didn't wait and expose it because we don't want to talk about Doctor Doom until the post-credit scene. So that's where I'm thinking. I think he's been Doctor Doom in that 4-year period, and I think it's
assuming
just
he's from Earth 828 and not just a Doctor Doom from another universe.
Yeah, you're right, but I'm assuming that is the case. Based on this movie, I'm inclined to think that's the 828 Doctor Doom because of that earlier gag that we had. I could be wrong, but those are the dots I'm connecting right now.
I kind of want to see, because I don't recall there being a confirmation either way. Executive Judge, if there's an interview where they say that Doom is from Earth 828, then like I'll trust that's to be true. But
Now, to be clear, like, that's not to say when they said that's Downey Jr. in that scene as a clip from that movie. That's not exactly the same thing as them saying, it's that is the exact Doom from that universe per se.
mm-hmm.
So that's the distinction you want to make there.
Yeah, and I think because the thing is,
I think it is, but I don't know. Big question. What do you think? Do you think it's a little scar, or do you think deformed like Downey Jr. face? What do you think?
I think it could be fully deformed, and when like Franklin touches him, he like is about to fully heal him, but like Sue stops like Franklin from touching Doom any further, and he has just like the small scar.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Because then you're able to see Downey's face.
Either way, I think when we see Downey in that movie, however we get there, I think he's gonna have the little scar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, how can you not? Because it was always like the genius conceit with Dr. Doom, just the idea of the vanity.
Well, I like the deformed look as well.
No, I'm with you. I personally, I think the deformed look is great, and it kind of adds like why he would wear the armor all the time. But by the same token, though, it was always like this awesome and hilarious conceit that his ego was so rampant. And I love like a villain with an ego and a pettiness about them.
Here's the thing: if it's like the one little scar, it'd be kind of interesting that he does all he does for Doomsday Secret Wars, and when the heroes defeat him and they change the universe, like sort of as a cost of punishment, whether that's intentional or not, like Doom wakes up and he has the fully deformed face.
That would be good. That's what I'm saying. If it was like,
and because you can show like a fully deformed face Doom, but it's not with like a specific. It could be just like kind of like how there was just a random like stand-in for Thanos. You can have a random stand-in for just like a deformed Doom, and then later down the line, you can then have an actor who can play full-on Doom, deformed look and all.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, I think we've reached the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our spoilercast was just only 15 minutes longer than the movie.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, so we should thank the folks for tuning
in. Thank you, Executive Judge, Tiki, and Teddy, Kogias.
We had Sonia Pantoja, kind of showed up for a brief bit there.
Yep.
And that's everyone. It's a whole ball of wax there. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Hope you had a good time. I know we went on a little long on this one, but there was a lot of movie to cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And this is great. The first steps in the MCU. It's gonna be I can't wait to see their next steps. I can't wait to see them show up in Doomsday as a win for the Fantastic Four.
If Spider-Man like has the home trilogy where home is included in each of the first three movies, the trilogy of the MCU FF will be the first word on the subtitle is like a number placement. So first taps, second something, third something.
Oh well, that's I was just thinking like first family. They give like a different surname, but they kind of. You're right though. They could be second this, third that, but it's. I don't know. Maybe
Fantastic Four, second chance.
It should be like a quadrilogy though, shouldn't it?
Yep.
Like the fourth movie should be like the full-on ending of like, okay, we've gone as far as we can.
So what would be like first steps,
second chance,
third
opportunity,
and fourth?
Okay, maybe it's that's why they have a market. That's why they have a market. Fourth chapter, the final chapter, the fourth and final chapter.
So that'd be the full title?
No. This is why the MCU is a marketing department, kids. They focus test these things, not us.
Well, Get to it, Marvel.
Yep. All right. It's clobbering time to go.
Good night, everybody.
Johnny likes sexy alien.
Fantastic